Hey there, Open Forcers, and welcome to this edition of the Gig Academy, where we talk about all things gig economy and independent contractor related. Today, I've got Mike Giaccone joining me. Mike, why don't you get us started? And thanks for joining us, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Nick, I appreciate it, man. Hey, listen, the company that I run is called Assemblers Incorporated. So for us, I mean, our major focus is on the assembly side of the business. I know with Open Force, you guys deal with a lot of logistics companies, and they're the guys that are doing the pickup and deliveries and the final mile white glove type services. And we do similar as well. But we spend most of our time in the complex assembly world, whether it's in-store assembly or an in-home assembly. Just a short bio on myself. I mean, I was with Home Depot back in 1985. I started with Home Depot at 19 years old. That was back in 85. There was only about 45 stores at the time. So they only had them in basically Atlanta, Miami, and New Orleans at the time. So it was great. It was a great experience because it was a great place to land for a kid who didn't know what he wanted to do with the rest of his life. And I was able to advance in that company. I became a store manager when I was 23, one of the youngest in the company's history. Spent a full 10 years with them. Went to Lowe's eventually after that. Lowe's started to make some waves and thought that may be a better place to go to after that. Instead, spent about two and a half years with them before I actually left Lowe's to start Assemblers. Assemblers has actually been in business now going on 23 years. So, and again, a lot of people ask, why did you start the business? And the great part about that is, or the answer to that is being a store manager in that retail environment and the home improvement side of the business. I mean, look, the assembly industry started back in the 80s with bikes. Okay. By the time I was with Home Depot in the mid 80s and into the early 90s, we started to see it affecting our business as well. So back in the day, for instance, I mean, we'd have basically a display and then you had boxes. So customer wasn't allowed to buy the display. They were allowed to buy the boxes only. Eventually we got the grand idea to say, hey, listen, we have people requesting these assembled. Why don't we build a display and then have one to go as well? Well, the one to go flew out the door. Then we went with two to go, they flew out the door. Then three to go, they flew out the door. And before you know it, we were assembling 100 to 200 grills at a time. It became the preference for folks to buy their grill, take it home, and be able to immediately start cooking on it. Yeah. So through the years, dealing with a lot of assembly companies when I was on the retail side of the business, wasn't always a pleasurable experience. Couldn't always take care of the needs that I had. So when I was with Lowe's and I finally got kind of the itch to start my own business, assembly was kind of one of the top businesses that I considered because the opportunities there were just endless. We felt like, assembly companies at the time weren't able to maximize what the stores wanted built. They weren't very good at scaling their staffing. They weren't great at relationship building, and there wasn't a lot of good things about that. So I figured if we could take those things and apply it to that business, that we could be successful. So I left a really good job running a Lowe's store on a tag list to become a district manager at one point, and started this business back in 98. In fact, my store I was running became my first customer. And I can remember my first day assembling at that store. I had 30 picnic tables. I was assembling on the front apron in 95-degree weather. And it's funny because I just took a group of trainees over there, and then we actually stood in the spot when I told them about that. The expressions on their faces were pretty funny. But that's pretty much kind of the main, I guess, bio about me as far as where I came from and why I got into the assembly business.
That's awesome, and that's great to hear how you saw a need that would be filled and came up with a solution, and now here you are 23 years later. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a little slow going. I mean, it took it probably took 8 years before we really started to get some traction. I think after 8 years we were only servicing probably less than 50 store locations. But then before you know it, from basically 2006 on, we started picking up hundreds of locations a year. To where today we basically represent thousands of locations around the country. Yeah. And again, we get into different businesses too. I mean, I know I'm talking about assembly, which may not have a lot to do with some of the folks that are listening, but we branched into in-home, and basically what that is not just the mass assembly you see in the retail stores that we do when you walk into Home Depot or the Lowe's or Academy or Walmart and see all those pre-assembled bikes and grills. Yeah. It's that customer that wants it done at their home as well. That customer that bought a trampoline, doesn't have anybody to put together, bought a piece of fitness equipment or a home gym, doesn't have anybody to put together. We do that in home, and we started that early on in our careers with assemblers. to the point where, we used to get probably, if we got 6 orders a week, that was a huge week. Today, we get probably hundreds of orders a day for that same service, which is, again, grown a lot over the 23 years that we've been in business. And of course, delivery came along with it. So you couldn't really always do one without the other. So that's where our participation in the white glove industry comes into play.
Well, that's awesome. And, it's really cool to hear how throughout the 23 years you've been in business, you kind of, shifted and found other markets to get into. So essentially, obviously, you said you started out with 50 locations and now you've branched to thousands of locations. What is Assembler's mission statement? Because obviously you're doing something right. You're growing. And, as we've talked, and I've talked with Tina and Anna, you guys grew a ton during COVID. So what is your mission statement? What's your why?
I wouldn't, mission statements are sometimes a lot of words. I mean, what we really believe in at Assemblers is really the most important part, and a lot of people can't always comprehend it, is relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that relationships with your corporate contacts at your clients and your individual store locations, the relationship with the individual residential customers, I mean, all that makes or breaks any type of service that we provide. So ultimately, look, we want to be full, we want to have integrity, we want to provide quality service, we want to do all the right things. But I think when it comes down to what I found is relationship building is probably the best thing that anybody in my company, whether you're an area manager, whether you're a technician in the field, whether you're whatever position you are, relationship building comes into play at some point in your success.
Okay. Excellent. So at the end of the day, it's all about people.
It is. It's a people business. I mean, most businesses are people businesses. I mean, you got your folks that are working for you doing the work that are important to us, and you got the customers that are obviously paying our bills that are important to us as well. So it all comes down to people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So for the remainder, and we're getting ready to head into the holiday season, and so obviously there's going to be a lot of looking forward to their first bike, or someone getting their first Peloton. What are some of the goals for Assemblers going into the holiday season and for the future?
Well, entering any season, we generally have two peak seasons a year. Our first peak season is spring. It generally starts in March, depending on what part of the country. In March in the South, April in the North. It'll run generally through the 4th of July. And then we have our second holiday season, which is the actual, Christmas holiday season, which we'll start prepping for it in October. Okay. It really picks up steam in November, and then December it really goes crazy. So, getting ready for this, we're excited about the season coming up. This year, because of the pandemic and everything, has been a very strange year. Last year was strange. We had a really good year last year, considering.
Yeah.
Most of our clients, in fact, all of our clients were considered essential places to be open. And all the stuff that people wanted were items that we were assembling. So if they couldn't go out to eat, they were buying barbecue grills so they could grill out at home. If they couldn't go to the gym, they were buying fitness equipment so they could work out at home. They need stuff for their kids to do. They were buying bikes and play sets and trampolines and whatever to keep the kids occupied while they were at home as well. Yeah. So for us, 2020 was a great year. 2021 has had its challenges. It's been a very uneven year as far as sales go. I mean, I gotta be honest with you, it seems like sales kind of shifted forward a month this year. To where Easter seemed to be the Memorial Day of this year. And then it seems like Memorial Day, Father's Day, 4th of July were a little kind of unimpressive. And we saw that the same thing with Labor Day this weekend, or this past couple of weeks as well. Okay. So we really don't know what the holiday season is going to hold yet. I mean, until we actually get there. Last year was okay, but we're not really sure. But in the meantime, prepping for peak season is a huge monumental task for us, because generally getting ready for peak season, we're essentially doubling our staff in a 30-day period. So if we have 1,000 people that work for us currently, that number needs to turn into 2,000 in a very short period of time in order to keep up with the demand. So that's kind of what we're getting ready to walk into. Again, it's an exciting time of year. We're excited to see what's going to do. We actually, the two good things that happened this year for us was that on the home improvement side during the spring, they allowed us to do all our prep work early this year. Yeah. I think they wanted to be ready to make sure they were going to have a great spring, and they allowed us to build much earlier than normal, even in the North. And I think that was a big success story for those folks, because guess what? Even though if there was snow on the ground, if you had grill displays out, you were selling grills even with snow on the ground. So that was something that was really cool to see. And like I said, going into holiday season this year, one of our major clients has decided to, instead of bulking us up in late November and into December, they're going to front load us with product actually in a couple of weeks starting in October. So
Wow.
we're going to have to double our staff for that particular customer again within 2 weeks in order to account for that. And then of course the in-home piece will continue to pick up as well. It'll pick up starting in November, usually by Black Friday. It's got some pretty good steam going. And then December, it's pretty crazy. So definitely a lot of uptick. And look, we do other services too.
Yeah.
Again, we have 3 prongs of business that we do. We do the mass in-store assembly. We do the in-home residential assembly, which includes delivery and assembly or white glove or e-commerce, whatever it may be. And then we service all the products that we build as well. So that's a whole nother piece, including other services like preventive maintenance and grill cleaning services and things like that. So those are kind of the 3 prongs of our businesses currently.
Awesome. Excellent. And with those 3 prongs of business that you're in and focusing on, are there any, unique challenges that you face with all of that?
Trying to get look, it's always nice to get the fully experienced person on staff.
Yeah.
Very rarely do you find that. So you're generally starting with brand new folks and you're teaching them the way of the business and of that particular niche that they may be in. So that can be challenging. I mean, look, the other big challenge, and I'm sure you guys had conversations with Tina Belau as well. She's my director of human resources. Our biggest challenge is just people. I mean, getting enough people to do the work. I mean, and again, even before the pandemic last year, you look back in, I guess, it was probably January or February of last year. Yeah. Unemployment was down to like 3.3, 3.5%. So you weren't going to get a lot of those folks to probably want to work.
Yeah.
So because everybody else was already working, those are the people you wanted were already working. Well, of course, here comes COVID and the pandemic, which kind of throws a monkey wrench in anything. And then you have enhanced unemployment benefits. Yeah. You have stimulus. You have a lot of different things that unfortunately on the backside work against businesses trying to hire because people are getting paid in some cases as much as they would make while they're working. So what do you think their choice is going to be? So all those obstacles came into play this year. And I guess, when I say, this year has been a challenge, it's been a challenge because number one is we had in some cases 20 recruiters. All they were doing was placing ads, fielding calls from interested applicants, vetting applicants. If they vetted correctly, we go ahead and get them and fill out their paperwork package, get them issued IDs, get them scheduled to go meet with a manager and work a store. And that's essentially what they did. So we spent a lot of money on ads. We spent a lot of money, obviously, on 20 recruiters and their salaries and all the effort that goes into those. And I would venture to say that in peak season, we were hiring 200 people across the country per week. And out of 200, I'd be lucky if 10 started. Wow. So that's what we were running into. So of course, all that cost, you're not getting any juice for the squeeze from that cost. Right. And then what you have to do is with your staff that you do have, you're shifting them around the country on a regular basis, which means I'm putting them on planes, trains, and automobiles. I'm putting them in hotels. I'm getting them rental cars. I'm paying them per diem. I mean, it got very expensive on that side of the business trying to maintain it this year. So, and of course, wages are going up. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I know we keep hearing about minimum wage, guaranteed minimum wage of $15 an hour. Well, I can tell you right now, McDonald's here in Chattanooga is hiring for $15 an hour now. Yeah. So any legit jobs, and when I look at anybody in the logistics side, anybody in our assembly field, I mean, these are skilled trades, and they require making 18 to 20 plus an hour in order to make sure that it's worthwhile for anybody doing the job. It's very hard work, whether you're a driver or whether you're an assembly technician. It's very hard work.
Absolutely. One other, and I'm interested to get your take on this. I hear a lot, and I'm sure we're hearing about it more in the news. About supply chain issues. Are you at all concerned about that for goods being delivered for assembly for the holiday season? Is that
the thought crossed the mind quite a bit, and I can tell you our retail partners this year that we deal with have done a really good job. I don't know what they had, crystal ball or whatever they saw in that crystal ball, but they were able to really stock their stores really well. I mean, we were dealing with Home Depot and Lowe's are 2 of our biggest home improvement clients, and there was never a time we thought they were going to run out of gas grills, and they never did. I mean, they still have an abundance of them. There were some supply issues with bikes. Okay. But we feel like right now it was worse last year. This year I've gotten, folks to reassure me that what they say is coming, where last year, what they said was coming only turned out to be about a quarter of what was coming. So I've got reassurances this year that those products are going to hit. But yeah, you look around, whether it's a car dealership, a boat dealership, basketball goals, play sets, anything across the board, everybody is pretty much sold out. And anything that's coming in is spoken for. So realistically, when you talk about this supply chain interruption, I mean, this is going to go on for another year or so. I mean, it's going to take a while to catch up. I mean, all these shutdowns from last year are just now starting to affect us. And in some cases, depending on what industry you're talking about, is, some are worse than others.
Definitely.
So,
Definitely. I'm glad to hear that, the accounts that you work with and everything, they kind of saw it coming and got things over. Cause I'm hearing the horror stories of where just a shipping container, was at like 3,000 to put your goods on. And then in some cases it's at 28K now and higher.
I got verification on that. We had a meeting with one of our clients out in Texas last week, and they verified that exact thing. $2,500 container now costs $28,000.
Jeez.
And
Yeah.
and to top it off, all these containers are sitting on the water right now.
Yep.
You can't even get them in docks, so they're literally having to shift them to other ports, even though it's going to be longer distance to get them where they needed to go, just in order to knock some time out of it. So there's a lot of issues right now in the logistics, supply chain, and everything else that's going on. A lot of challenges.
Definitely. I've been hearing similar. There's the Marine Tracker app. I don't know if you look at that at all, but apparently, well, last time I checked, which was yesterday, 60 of the cargo ships are sitting off the coast of Long Beach waiting to unload. And right now, the average unload time is about 2 weeks. So it's gonna be really, really interesting to see here. But and as far as with what you're doing, I'm really happy to hear that Lowe's and Home Depot and we'll get into more too, some of your bigger accounts, but I'm glad to hear that they saw it coming and went ahead and prepared for it.
Yeah, I think our guys have done a pretty good job with that. Academy Sports and Outdoors is another one that's done a really good job
Awesome.
of doing some projections and making sure they've got product coming in. And look, they have plan Bs too.
Yeah.
If something goes south and they run out of product, they've all got plan Bs. I mean, they won't. I'm not privy to those plan Bs, but they're there.
So and this makes me even happier too, because for a guy or gal that's maybe sitting at home, listening to this podcast that wants to get out and work now, obviously this sounds like it's going to be some steady work that they can get involved with. So kind of going on along that line of thinking and conversation, for that person listening right now, can you kind of explain the difference between delivering and assembling, being a driver or a technician, kind of, and the three different prongs that you were describing? You kind of touched on it, but it kind of a day in the life, if you could give a highlight reel.
Yeah, look, it's I've been attending logistics conferences, which really don't have anything to do with mass in-store assembly, but we've been attending them for quite a few years now. And NHDA is one of the ones we've been attending more frequently. I think IFTLC we attended one or 2 years, but NHDA seemed to be a better fit for what we were looking for. And the reason why we do it is because they share a lot of the same common problems that we have.
Yeah.
Maybe just a little bit of a different way, but pretty much the same types of challenges that we run into. When you look at drivers that are driving, look, and we're not talking over the road drivers, correct? We're talking about the final mile white glove guys or gals.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you talk about those folks, look, their white glove, and the difference between their white glove and our white glove is really one thing. They're doing either none or simple assembly, big and bulky, something that you just put in place, unbox, whatever. There's very minimal assembly to it. It's a table, you put 4 legs on it, you're done. What we're doing is what we call complex assembly. So for us, their goal, I'm assuming, is to be in and out of a house within 15 minutes or 30 minutes. When one of our drivers goes to a home and delivers product, or we send a technician out to meet an e-com product at someone's home, they're going to be there for at least an hour, maybe even more. If they're doing a home gym, they could be there for 2 or 3 hours. If they're doing a place set, that could be an all-day job. Or if they're doing a storage building, that could be an all-day job. So the main difference between the two is just the amount of the complexity of the assembly and the amount of time our folks spend at these locations. But look, I've got, drivers can easily adjust to that. Look, the difference between, one of them and one of my techs is my techs may have more tools than they do. That's really it. Yeah. I think the cool part about our industry is our industry kind of pays people kind of the same. We do piecework. Okay. And we're still obligated to have to track minimum wage and overtime when we're dealing with W-2 employees. But like I said, we do a mix of W-2s and we do a mix of 1099 subcontracted companies, which we call network partners. Okay. So again, the difference between that 1099 delivery driver and let's say a 1099 a technician that works for one of our network partners is basically, look, the difference is going to be simple assembly versus complex assembly for the most part.
Yeah.
It may be different on as far as windshield time goes, as far as how much you're sitting behind the windshield of a truck as opposed to in the customer's home doing the product. But ultimately, look, they may have different sets of tools where a driver may only need some simple tools. Our technicians may have other tools that accommodate mass assembly or bike assembly or repair work or things like that they carry around with them in order to do their jobs as well. But in the industry, the cool part about how our folks work is we're paid by the piece. All our techs are paid by the piece.
Yeah.
Again, we have to track minimum wage. We have to track overtime in the case of W-2s. With the case of 1099s. Now, obviously, that's not the case. That's up for their companies to take care of any of those obligations that they have.
Right. Yeah.
But look, the beauty of piecework is the harder you work, the more productive you are, the more efficient you are, the more money you make. So I would say any average person, once they get kind of the hang of doing this work, should be able to make $15 an hour without a problem. But I've got technicians that make in excess of $20, $25 an hour because they made the investment in tools. They understand the products and how to be efficient. They found easier ways of putting them together, getting the same result. And the other part of it is, look, the work is I don't want to say uber oriented, even though we're kind of getting to the point where I take anybody. Including an Uber type person, I would say, hey, look, I want to work certain hours or certain days, whatever. I'm fine with that. I mean, the more the merrier. But you can kind of do that with this job. I mean, you can kind of work at your own leisure, knowing that March, April, and May and June are going to be busy, unlimited work. I can almost 100% guarantee we'll never run out of work during those months. Or November, December, where there's unlimited work. We have a lot of technicians that only work for us seasonally. They come back for those peak seasons and they bolt. Go do other things during the off season. So it offers a lot of flexibility. You got to be able to work with your hands. You got to be able to, regardless of whether you've assembled a product or not, be able to read instructions, understand instructions. Other than that, it's pretty much, make as much as you want to kind of deal. I mean, we don't scoff at people working too many hours. We want you to take as much as you can.
That's awesome. So it sounds like too, someone could be, just throwing it out there like door dashing, and then, on the hours that are peak for that, and then coming over and doing assembly work, and doing these pieceworks and everything. And then maybe, the hours that they're not doing that, then they're hopping on Uber and, Uber. So they can kind of have multiple revenue streams, what you're saying.
And that seems to be the trend these days, is that people are working multiple avenues, doing multiple Uber type jobs where there's DoorDash or Uber or whatever it may be, and they're finding different types of jobs to do, and that's good.
Yeah,
because like I said, look, we have business year round, but we do have seasons. I mean, we have season. We have a huge spike in the spring, and we have almost the same kind of spike in the holiday season. So there is that flat area in between those seasons that we maintain probably 700 or 800 technicians around the country. But that, like I said, that has to double when we get into those peak seasons. So those folks, no matter whether they work 10 hours a week or 40 hours a week for us, they all matter. So it's a great way to make some extra income as well. I mean, so, look, we have folks that depend on it as a career, and do really well with it. And then we have some that just work on, they work part-time, they work part of the year. I mean, it's again, flexible. That you couldn't have anything more flexible than that.
Yeah. So a guy like me, I like to work with my hands. There hasn't been an IKEA, assembly instruction that stumped me. I'm one of those weird guys that it makes sense and I put it together right away. What could a person like me that's, handy and everything, what could I expect to be, assembling on the day-to-day basis if I'm, working, full-time job, and then I want to earn some extra money on the side, or if I want to do this for a full-time gig?
It depends on what you look. Again, there's all those avenues of income. There's the in-store assembly, there's the in-home assembly, and then there's the service work. And all three of those are available to our contracted partners. So you can get into any one of them you want. You can do any combination of them that you want. I mean, some folks find that they like to do one thing more than the other. And look, we don't nitpick it.
Okay.
You just go ahead and take what we can get and plug them in where their strengths are, and try to, make them put them in a position for success. And in turn, if we do that, hopefully we're in a position for success. And then of course our clients are in a position for success as well. So, but the earning potential is good. The flexibility is great. And like I said, what you do is really up to you, how much you want to learn.
So then, what are some kind of like, what should I be coming into this with like kind of a base set of skills? Is there something that you look for too when you're looking for an independent contractor to come do, like say like it's like assembling a grill at Lowe's kind of thing?
There's not, I get that question quite a bit. What kind of person does it take to make it here? And I gotta be honest with you, I've got folks that were Avon ladies.
Okay.
That did really, really good. And I had a guy that used to work for NASA building space shuttles, and he was horrible. So
wow.
it's a wide spectrum.
Yeah.
Look, generally the folks that are going to do well with us are probably going to be in their mid-20s, probably to their late 30s, early 40s, because look, the job is physical. Just like with the drivers, they're lifting, stooping, they're carrying heavy loads. I mean, it's a very physical. Our guys are the same way. They're lifting, stooping, getting nicked up, they're getting dirty. They're working not necessarily in exposed weather, but in the heat and the cold. It's not a pleasant. It's one of those dirty jobs you'd see on that show on whatever channel it was.
Micro, yeah.
It'd be like one of those. So you never know. I mean, that age range is pretty good. But I've had retired people working for me. I have retired people that I may put in one store and say, hey, go there every day they want something and just take care of them, and I can forget about it.
Yeah.
Then I've got other folks that want to go wherever they can go to make more money. So there's not a really hard and fast. I would venture to say that if you don't know what a drill is, there's probably going to be a problem. Because a lot of people don't realize, we're not using screwdrivers and pliers and wrenches and things like that. 90% of the work our technicians do, they have an impact driver in their hand with the proper attachment on there. They use the other tools, don't get me wrong, but that's what they're using the bulk of the time. So if you have no knowledge of tools, that may be a little bit of a challenge. We actually started some programs this last year because we had some folks that wouldn't start because they didn't have the proper tools. We have a very basic tool requirement for these new hires. And we're working with a company called Equip that's actually putting together a toolkit for us that we can go ahead and provide share cost with a new technician that's coming on. So they're not burdened with that whole cost initially. Yeah. At least get some tools so they can actually get productive quicker. So, again, trying to think outside the box on how to try to get new hires on board and get them started and get them retained and get them, in a future for success.
So what would you say to, an independent contractor coming on, in a way you started out as like, I'm assuming too, when you started this business 23 years ago, you were your first, you were it. So you started it from the ground up, built a business. And so what would you say to, if I was walking in there, what I should expect and what the possibilities are?
Well, look, one of the things I'm a fan of is, look, when I started the company 23 years ago, you're right. I was the president, the owner, the technician, the area manager, the ops manager. I was pretty much wearing all the hats. Okay. And then through the years, it's changed. I mean, I don't assemble anything regularly anymore. Every once in a while, I'll challenge myself to try to do it. But I didn't have any help starting this business. So not only did I not know how to start a business in general, I didn't know anything about the assembly industry other than what I got exposed to at the stores I ran as a store manager at Lowe's and Home Depot. So I didn't have anybody to come in and say, hey, you should use these tools, you should use this process. Everything had to be learned on the go. So it took a long time for me to figure things out. I was all thumbs when I was thinking about starting the company. I actually went and bought a grill from Lowe's, brought it back to my garage, tried to put it together. It took me 3 hours to put it together, and I had parts left over, which was it was a little concerning after it was said. So I'm thinking, do I really want to do this? Yeah, I did it anyways, even though it was probably bad judgment at the time. But the funny part is a few months later, that same grill I could put together in about 15 minutes.
That's awesome.
So again, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But again, back to the original question. I mean, we didn't have any guidance when we started. We had to learn on the go. Yeah. I'm a big fan of business owners. I'm a big fan of independent contractors that start their own businesses, whether it's them in one person, them in 10 people, them in 100 people, it doesn't matter. I'm a big fan of that because I'm a business owner and I respect, nobody's going to run a business like a business owner. And they'll beat up any manager of any company any day of the week because they own the business. There's a difference. Yeah. But for those guys and gals, we want to help them be successful, and we're going to give them the information that we never had. We're going to help them say, here's how you are successful in this business. That's our philosophy. It won't be the philosophy of every other assembly company that's out there, but for us, it is.
Awesome.
We want them to be successful. We want to show them the ropes. We want to help them grow. I mean, maybe we have a company that comes to us that operates in Chattanooga, and they want to grow. So maybe we eventually grow them into North Georgia or Knoxville or something like that. We have a lot of success stories of companies that have come on with us, started with basically very low volume. And in this day and age, they've exceeded millions of dollars in volume in each of the companies. So they've discovered a lot of success, and I'm proud of those.
Yeah.
I feel like I said, we nurtured those companies, we helped them along, and I feel like we get some loyalty because of that. But I think that's a big deal. I think us being as transparent as we are, being willing to put our arm around somebody and help them along to avoid all the potholes that we had to go through is a big deal.
Awesome.
So we're very committed to our network providers, which are our 1099s.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Mike, this has been great. Where can someone go if they're interested in doing assembly work?
Just go to our website, www.assemblersinc.net. Go to the join us page, join our team, and it'll take you the rest of the way. But again, if there's an opening that's not listed there, please send your information regardless. I mean, if you got a company or a team or something somewhere in the country, doesn't matter whether it's Utah or Florida or Michigan, it doesn't matter. We can always put you to work no matter where. And like I said, I look at that thing and I question my human resource department, say, that's all the openings that we have? There's a lot on there, don't get me wrong. I said, well, what if somebody from Alaska comes and asks for a job? I could always use somebody up in Alaska, because we always have those odd jobs that come around. I mean, so go to that website, hit the join our team button, and then like I said, if you don't see something that you're looking for, definitely reach out. There's a contact us page on there as well. You can send us some information about yourselves and tell us what you guys are about, and we'll be glad to look at it. Because I said, look, we're always hiring. There's not a time of year we're not hiring. We're still hiring today. We'll be hiring tomorrow. We'll be hiring next month. I mean, it's sometimes I think of ourselves almost as a temp agency. We're always hiring, always trying to find people to fill holes. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you, Mike. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Gig Academy. And check out the show notes for the information to get on the road with assemblers. Mike, thank you again for joining us.
Hey, appreciate it, Nick.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too.